Ja, als je gelooft dat er één God is en je gelooft dat Mohammed een van de profeten is, dus naast Jezus, Mozes, etc., dan ben je formeel een moslim.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. There's a good news. Joram van Klaveren accepted Islam. And who is he? Let me introduce to you this guy. He was the member of far-right group in Dutch Netherlands. He was in fact an MB of that particular party, PVV, from 2010 to 2014. He was a parliament guy. He was a member of the parliament. And he used to go on TV to TV, bashing Islam and saying Islam is lie or Quran is poison. What happened is he would do more research to find reason how he can bash Islam. And while he's doing research, Allah guided him and he saw the truth and accepted it. In fact, he left the party in 2017 and now he announced on Monday that I am a Muslim. MashaAllah. This is a lesson for everyone who is against Islam, who is running channels, so on and so forth. My brother, let me ask you a question. What if you're wrong? Whatever you're doing, what if you're wrong? Then what? I invite you to study Islam, to study the Quran, to study the life of Muhammad ﷺ, to go and sit with a Muslim who possesses knowledge. Do not go around and find some innocent young Muslims and question them about Islamic values and certain principles because they don't know. And then you're like a hero. Yes, I'm the smart guy. They can't answer me. No, go to proper mashayikh. There was an ex-Muslim and he wanted to debate me. I said, okay, have you read these books? He said, no. I asked him, have you consulted and talked to your local scholars? I named a few of them in his locality. He says, no, then why do you want to talk to me? When you haven't even talked to them, then why you want to talk to me in different continent? We have to be honest. We should let this egoistic nature of us to go away. This will not benefit us. This useless struggle of us will not help us in Day of Judgment. So my request to everyone is, please, go and study Islam. Go and read about Islam. Go and talk to a proper mashayikhs who can give you proper answers.
ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا قال رب إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيبا.
Well, my name is Joram van Klaveren. I'm from the Netherlands, and I used to be a member of the PVV. It's probably a party that you do not know, and if you do know, that's something special to know. It's the party of Geert Wilders. Maybe you've ever heard of him, the guy with the blonde hair. It's not his real hair color. I know. But he founded the party in 2006, and it's called the PVV, the Freedom Party of the Netherlands. And the main goal of that party was to make sure that Islam was not able to grow in the Netherlands, and later on it was the purpose was to ban Islam from the Netherlands in total. Well, I'll come back to that later. Maybe it's interesting that I introduce myself a little bit. My name is Joram van Klaveren, as I said, and I grew up in a very Orthodox Protestant environment. My mother and father were members of the Reformed Church. I have an older brother, a sister, another younger brother. We went to church. We read the Bible. We did all the things that normal Christian people do. But we were we were members of a very strict denomination of the Christian Church. So other religions, were gone astray, in the opinion of the theologians of my church. So that's something that it was not explicitly said, but it's something that you learn during the days that you get raised till let's say 16, 17. I had a certain religious bias towards Islam, not specific Islam, but other religions in general. But Islam was certainly not an option to look at in a positive way whatsoever. I studied religion, comparative religion, when I got older. I went to university. But you take, of course, the things you learn in your upbringing with you. So that's something I did too. I became politically active after 9/11, because September 11, 2001 was the first day of my study of comparative religion. So it was a strange kickoff. After that, we had a murder in the Netherlands. Maybe you've heard of it, Theo van Gogh. He was murdered by a jihadist. A lady who is active in the United States as well, who's from the Netherlands, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She was in parliament when I was an assistant of a politician back then. So the whole sphere in a political sense and in a social sense was very anti-Islam. Of course, you had the terrorist attacks in London, Madrid, etc., etc. So there was a certain, it was a certain time that the view that people had when it came to Islam became a negative and more negative, more negative. And I think that another thing that's very important that played a role in the way I developed myself is the fact that in Europe there is a historical bias towards Islam because of the historical clashes, and we have crusades from the Christian church towards the Islamic world. There are attacks from Ottoman Empire, for example, on the Christian part of the world. So there have been clashes for hundreds of years, one side, the other side, and the other way around. And the combination of those things, the start of my comparative religion study at September 11, 2001, the fact that Theo van Gogh was murdered, my upbringing, and I think the historical bias of Europe when it comes to Islam, the combination of those things made me want to become politically active, and I was searching for a party who was most anti-Islam. Well, I found that party. There was Geert Wilders from the PVV, and I did everything I could when I became a member of parliament. It was in 2009, 2010, so that's way back. And the last, I think, 7-8 years of the 7-8 years after that, I did everything that I could to stop Islam from growing. I tried to get legislation to ban Islamic schools in the Netherlands, to ban all mosques, to prohibit reading the Quran. So, and in one time we made legislation, or we tried to make legislation to ban Islam in general from the Netherlands, of course, and alhamdulillah, it didn't work. But that was something that we tried. And I left Islam. Sorry, I left the political party, the PVV, in 2014, 2015, and that was because it was an anti-Islam party. But in 2014, 2015, Geert Wilders was active at a rally, a right-wing rally, and he asked the people, "Do you want more or less Moroccans?" And the whole crowd shouted less, less, less. And then he said, "Okay, I'll make that happen." And that was, for me, was a point that I thought, okay, I'm still anti-Islam, but this has nothing to do with anti-Islam anymore. This anti-Moroccans. So I asked him to take his words back or change it or do whatever to play it down a little bit. He said, "No, why should I?" So then I left, and in 2017 I stopped politics in general. I do something else now. I work for the radio and teach and other things. No politics anymore. But there was one long-held desire that I had, was writing an anti-Islam book, because because I was still anti-Islam, only not active in politics anymore. And I was, I thought it would be a very important thing that all the things that I said and that anti-Islamic people and groups say, that we have a theoretical basis with great grounds, so we can point to the book when people have discussions, and we would solve the dispute about Islam. Is Islam a religion of peace, or is it something very wrong and evil when it comes to Europe or the West or the world in general? So I started writing the book, but I always had, as a Christian guy, my doubts on certain dogmas of the Christian Church, for example, the Trinity, the crucifixion of Christ, and I thought those were points when it comes to the Christian dogmas that are difficult to understand. So, but I was writing the book, but those, I tell you this because it comes back later in my story. I tried to write the book, and what I did was all the objections that I had, and those were, for example, Islam promotes terror. That's something that I thought. Islam is anti-women, Islam is anti-Jewish, Islam is anti-democracy. Well, all the prejudices and all the stereotypes when it comes to Islam, I had. And what I did was starting to read and reread the articles and the books that I already read. But at some point I came across information that was at odds with the things that I was used to read and what I learned in the past. So I started writing letters to several ministers, to imams, and to scholars. And one of those scholars was Abdul Hakim Murad. He's a professor from University of Cambridge. But I didn't know that. I just followed a line and thought, oh, well, he's a scholar, so I write. And I didn't know if people would write back because I put a little link from Wikipedia, and my own page is in English as well. So I thought, okay, I give them at least the information so they know who they are talking or writing with. And after I find out who he was, I thought, oh, well, he will never answer. But he is one of the greatest scholars in Europe when it comes to Islam. And but he did. And I got a 17-page mail back. And I thought, whoa. So I started reading and reading and reading, and he asked me at the end, how is it possible? Because you studied comparative religion at Free University, where Abdul Hakim Murad also taught in the past. So he asked me, what happened? And what titles did you read, and what's the information you got? So I gave him a list with titles. He said, okay, I know where you're coming from, I understand. And I explained that when I was younger and I was at university, the points that I mentioned earlier when it comes to the historical bias and the upbringing, etc. But at one point in 2003, 2004, I went as a student to several mosques. And I asked several Muslims, well, what's up with Afghanistan, Taliban, etc., etc. And there was one guy who told me, well, that's what Islam wants. And he was a Muslim. And he said to me, yeah, well, I don't like it either, but that's what God wants, so we have to do that point. And then I thought, whoa, you're even more crazier than I thought. And that hardened my views when it came to Islam. And I told Abdul Hakim Murad as well, and he said, well, you know what the point is, that you have Dar al-Islam, he said it's a house of Islam, and you are in a little barn somewhere in the garden with all the extremists, the anti-Islam guys and the extreme Muslims. He said what you have to do is get out of the barn, walk into the garden, look at the house, go into the house, and then we talk again. You can ask questions again. And that's what, and I asked him, well, I'm willing to get out of the barn if you give me some information, how, a map. So he gave me some information. I started reading and reading, and in the end, I thought, okay, Islam, the teachings of Islam, I thought, okay, that it looks very much like Christianity, be polite, of course, believing in God, believing in the prophets, etc. But in the end, the big difference, of course, is whether the question whether is Muhammad is a prophet or not. So I thought, okay, maybe Islam, the teachings of Islam are okay, but Muhammad is still, as I learned, an antichrist, or he is a crook, or all the bad things you can imagine. That was still the view that I held when it came to Prophet Muhammad. What I did was comparing him not to Jesus, because a lot of people always say you have to compare him with Jesus, but I found that illogical, because Jesus had another mission. Even when I was still not a Muslim, I thought, well, it's more fair to compare him to Moses, because I thought, well, in the Christian church I was brought up, they called Moses the lawgiver, and I thought, well, Prophet Muhammad brought a law as well, the SYARIAH. So I thought, well, we have two guys who say they bring a law, so it's more fair that I compare those two with each other. And I thought, well, one of my objections was Muhammad used violence. And then, yeah, I read, of course, Moses used violence as well, and especially the guy who followed Moses when Moses died, Joshua is a prophet as well in the Old Testament. He used a lot of violence. And when I compared the teachings when it came to war between the Bible and the Quran, I found out that what the Quran, for example, says you cannot kill women, children, now all the things you probably know. But in the Bible, there are passages that say the opposite. They say you have to kill women, kill them all. And of course, let's be happy that that's not what the most Christian churches teach. But there are passages in the Old Testament that say that you have to wipe out everything, even the grass. So everything has to be erased. So I thought, okay, when it comes to violence, I can no longer say that Muhammad, because he fought a war, and it was a defensive war, that he is no prophet if I accept Moses and Joshua, for example. So okay, and then I went to another point and another point, and all the points that my objections against Muhammad, when I compared it to other prophets, I had no grounds anymore. So in the end, I thought, well, maybe they are all no prophets, or Muhammad is a prophet as well. And that was a point for me that I had to look into my heart to see, I still believe in God. Well, if you believe in God, why do you believe God? There is a revelation. If I believe in a revelation, that the revelation is brought by someone or someone's. That's not an English word, but by people. And those people we call prophets. So I thought, okay, then Muhammad is a prophet. And then I realized, well, if I say Muhammad is a prophet and I believe in God, then there is a problem, because then I would be a Muslim, and that's not still something I didn't want to be. And so I talked to a lot of people, and they say, yeah, well, if that's the case, you are a Muslim, whether you like it or not, or you must stop believing in God or something. But I couldn't, and then I thought, okay, I just park it and I don't do anything with it, and I'll leave it for what it is. But yeah, if you are a believing person, whether you're not a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim, you want to do something with the things you believe in, especially when it's the core or the cornerstone of your life. And it was still so. I believed in God, and I thought, I want to abide the laws of God. I want to do something that is good. So I had to do something with my newfound information, and I started looking for a publisher to do something with the book. And the book was not already finished, but most of the parts that I found out and the new information I found out were in the book, but not yet my conversion, because I didn't convert it yet. And I was looking for a typical Dutch publisher. So it's called in Dutch, it's called het Kennishuis. It means house of wisdom. But they wrote it in old style Dutch, and when you write it in old Dutch, it's typical Dutch. Most nationalist guys write it in Old Dutch, so you see, oh, whoa, he's real Dutch. So that's what it, and I thought, okay, and the publisher wrote at Kennishuis, so the House of Wisdom, in Old Dutch. And they were specialized in Islamic literature. So I thought it was an anti-Islamic publisher. And I wrote them, well, I have scripted, and I got it back. And I said, maybe we can meet. And yeah, all of a sudden there was a guy against me, and he sitting in front of me, and he was a Muslim. I said, oh, why you look Muslim? Yeah, I am a Muslim. It's Islamic. It's an Islamic publisher. Islamic publisher, you called it Kennishuis, and you wrote it in Old Dutch. Yeah, I know, but we did it on purpose because we're in that way we try to reach out for people who think that Islam is not compatible with the West or with Holland in this case. So we start talking. I told him where I was, that I believed that Muhammad probably was a prophet, and I still believe in God. He said, well, you are a Muslim, but you don't know it yet. So I start reading, and it took a couple of months, and after those months we were eating at home by the publisher, and there was an imam with us and some other guys, also non-Muslims, and the imam suddenly asked me, do you believe in God, yes or no? I said, yes. Do you believe Muhammad was a prophet, yes or no? I said, yes. I said, well, we take the Shahada now, or is it something you do not want to do? And then I said, yeah, I think deep in my heart I want to do it, but I cannot do it because, of course, because of family, and yeah, because I was a right-wing nationalist. I cannot become a Muslim. That's ridiculous. But I did, and it made me very happy, and I'm still very happy today. Unfortunately, a lot of people in our family, of course, are a little less happy when I did it. And some Muslims ask me, well, aren't you mad at your family, or why aren't you disappointed? But I'm not, because especially my mother, she was very sad, and she said, it's not because I'm sad because you became a Muslim. She said, I would also be sad when you became a Buddhist, because she thinks Christianity is the truth, so she was worried for my soul. So I couldn't be, in the first place, it's hard to be mad at your mother, but especially when somebody is mad or sad out of love. So that's something that I always try to remember. But there are a lot of, of course, the old supporters of the political party I was active in, who are not so happy. The usual death threats and stuff like that. But that's not something that holds you back, because it made me very happy. And the doubts I had is that what I told about Christianity, the doubts I had when it comes to the Trinity of God and the crucifixion, the fact in Christianity people believe that God had to sacrifice Jesus Christ so he could forgive the world. But at the same time, in the Bible, it says that God is almighty and does what he wants to do. And I always thought as a child, well, if you are almighty as God, why can't you just forgive? Why is there a son who had to die before you can say, okay, I forgive? So I thought it was illogical. I still think Christianity is a nice religion, only I didn't believe the truth with a capital T. It wasn't there for me anymore. And strangely enough, when I was writing the book, I got Islamic answers to Christian questions. And that was a point for me that I thought, it gave me a lot of rest, and my heart and my head resonated. And that's something that I didn't have before. So when I felt that, and of course you believe it, that made me in the end deciding to become a Muslim, and that's what I did, and I still am. And I'm very happy. That's in short story. So.
Bugüne kadar hiç Hristiyan terörü, Yahudi terörü, Budist terörü, şayet kişi herhangi bir inanca mensup değilse ateist terörü diye bir şey işittiniz mi? İşte biraz sonra genişçe değineceğim. Az önce ifade ettim. Myanmar'da katledilen Müslümanlarla ilgili böyle bir nitelemeyi hiç duydunuz mu? Duyamazsınız. Çünkü sadece eylemci Müslümansa inancıyla sıfatlandırılır, değilse hiç sözü edilmez. Bu tavır asla iyi niyetli değildir. Bilakis küresel İslamofobinin bir parçasıdır. Batı ülkelerinde ve hatta global düzeyde İslam'la terör kavramlarını eşleştirme, aynı parantezin içine alma çabasının bir ürünüdür. Bu oyunu hep birlikte bozacağız. Buna hazır mıyız? Evet.